Oh, hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of whatever we decide to call this. Interviews with magicians. That's boring. We'll come up with something better later on. But sometimes we do this on Tuesdays, and lately we've been doing it on Saturdays. Lately, as in today, because that's the first time we're doing it on a Saturday. And the reason for that is because Pose Magic is taking a break from virtual magic shows and focusing on the magicians who provide magic shows. With interviews, we kind of noticed that at some point, most of our audience was magicians anyway, so it might as well pander to the people that are coming to your events, right? So that
I'm all about pandering whenever possible.
That's
so that
right.
Sounds good.
So I'm very excited to have a friend of mine on today. We've known each other for about, I guess, 6-7 years, maybe.
I think so, yeah.
Something like that, yeah. Daniel Greenwolf. And I'm reading this, of course, right from his website, which you can see in the comments there below, that little streaming sign, which is appropriately green. And I can see I wore my green today as well. Daniel Greenwolf is an award-winning magician, writer, creator, and slightly mad Irishman. I can agree with that. Greenwolf was voted as one of the top 5 solo variety acts in the United States by the Renaissance Festival Podcast and Renaissance Magazine for 5 years in a row. He has opened world-renowned musician Wendy Rule for the cast of Beatlemania, as well as international Celtic rock group Enter the Haggis. Daniel has been featured in the film documentary Magic Camp and on AAMC Network's Dispatches from Elsewhere, starring Jason Segel and Sally Field. The Magic of Daniel Greenwolf is a show that takes highly visual magic, theatrical storytelling, exhilarating Irish music, interactive comedy, and thrilling danger, and wraps it in a Celtic theme that has been described as a witty modern-day Celtic Viking, like James Joyce with a broadsword. Over the past 15 years, Daniel has performed for hundreds of clients, including Wonderground, Comics, what is that one? Oh, the Mark Twain House and Museum, Six Flags, Big E, etc., etc., etc. All right, so Daniel, thank you for coming on.
Etc., and so forth.
Hello, yeah, that's right. Sir. Thank you for coming on today. It's great to see you.
Great to see you too. Although I feel like I've got a bit of a Max Headroom thing going on with my camera, but we'll just go with it and see what happens.
That's right. Well, it adds to the flair. You're a Celtic virtual magician now.
Yeah, that's what it seems like lately. I mean, I've gotten to do some stuff live, but we've been doing Celtic Magic virtually live now since goodness. Well, we really started doing live streaming shows in March of 2020. Is when we started doing it, and it's been rewarding and strange all at the same time.
I know. So Dave, let's start off with how you got into magic and what has been your influences in entertainment.
So I always find this the interesting story for me because I always like to say I kind of started in reverse from a lot of bizarre magicians. And, I look at Bane in the Dark Knight Rises is where my brain goes to with all that stuff. Because, Bane with his mask and everything says, "You embrace the darkness. I was born in it." And that's kind of where I started because I started magic when I was 10. I saw Jeff McBride on World's Greatest Magic 2. And then by 12, I was being brought by my mentor, Joe Lantieri, to the Inner Circle Bizarre Magic. So by the time, when a lot of people were supposed to be, imagining dove acts and having these ideas of having these glitzy illusion shows, I was doing a 7-minute routine with the Okido voodoo doll that involved a drum. I've since gone past that and cut down my time on that routine significantly, and I dropped the drum. But that's the thing that always got me, was that I started in bizarre magic. I started in storytelling magic. People like Jeff McBride, who, even though he was definitely a mainstream performer, was definitely not was definitely not your run of the mill kind of type. The first act I saw was the mask act, which is just something that's so different and visually so strange. And then, from there, Hiawatha Johnson Jr., Eugene Berger, Max Maven. These are people that I'd see on these magic specials. And they would inspire me. And like I said, I mentioned Joe Lantieri, who, he's written, I believe he's got pieces in the Mystery School book. I believe he's got pieces in the Invocation. I might be wrong on that. But he was, part of the bizarre scene from early on. And that was, my parents were Wiccan, and my mom still is. My dad might be his, wherever he is, he's dead. So, maybe he still is. I'm not sure. But maybe, but he, but that's how we met him. We met him at a pagan festival, and my parents said, "Hey, our son's into magic," and he brought me to the International Brotherhood of Magicians, Ring 59, and then to the Inner Circle of Bizarre Magic, where I met some amazing people, and who I'm still friends with to this day, like Vlad, for instance.
I knew he was going to come up very soon.
Yep.
Yeah, Vlad is you performed with him on a regular basis. You had a show with him.
We did. Yeah, we did.
Yeah. How'd that happen?
So actually, what's funny with that is that, so when we were performing in Salem, Massachusetts. We performed in Salem, Mass every October for about a decade, I think. And the first year that they didn't perform, the first year it was him and Sean Phoenix and David Burtwell. And they were performing a show. They had done the first year, and they're like, well, we want to do this again in October. They were doing like a weekend or something in October in Salem. At the time, Vlad was living in Lowell, and I believe Sean was living in Danvers, and David was living in Beverly. I might be way off on those, but I'm close enough. And so they performed there, and Vlad had known me from the Renaissance Fairs and from the Inner Circle Bizarre Magic, because we did the Southern Connecticut Renaissance Fair together, and we'd worked on a whole bunch of different things. And Vlad had said, listen, this is Salem. We need somebody who can be an outside talker. We need somebody who's going to drag people off the street. And I said that I was excited and interested in performing in Salem, Massachusetts. I think I was 20 something at the time, or maybe 19, maybe 20. I don't know. But Vlad said, this is the guy to go with. And David had known me. Sean Phoenix didn't know me that well. But they said flat out, they go, hey, we're going to do a 30-minute show, and we want you to come up and outside talk for us. I don't like to use the term, term carnival barker is actually rather passe. It would be the outside talker. And I was a very big guy. I was, I still had long red hair, but I was 355 pounds, and I wore Renaissance outfits. And so I was a very big, imposing figure. And I told them, I said, I don't mind that, but I also want to do magic, because I'm a magician. I don't just want to talk and yell at people. And so they said, sure, we'll give you a spot in the show. And that started a 10-year or so tradition in which we would do a new show every season in Salem. And we had all kinds, every problem you could think of. At one point, our show in Salem was shut down because the place we were in that they said was okay was shut down for fire code reasons. Didn't have like the proper exits and stuff. So we ended up performing in, we'd perform during the day in the street, and then the evening at Fright Kingdom in Nashua, New Hampshire. I think it's Nashua. So it was crazy, but yeah, I performed actual street work. I was busking for a good number of years in Salem, because of stuff like that. And we were doing shows. We were performing in the old Social Security building, Social Security spots in a Unitarian Universalist church, was our last year with Vlad and myself. And a couple of years we got to perform in a place called Life and Death in Salem, which is this really cool shop in the Museum Place Mall that sold like postmortem photos, like the Victorian postmortem photos and all these artifacts of death and gothiness and silliness. And it was a perfect place for us, really. It was great. We performed in the back room, and we did that for a number of years. So Salem was such a trip, and I loved it. But yeah, they almost said, they're like, Dave and Sean are like, I don't know about this guy. I don't know if can he perform a show? Can he do an act? I don't know. So I was glad that Vlad went to town and went to bat for me, as it were.
Nice. So, Vlad ended up moving away for a while, to this day, and he performs down south mostly.
Yep.
So what happened after that? What after the departure of Vlad and
Well, it's funny because Vlad and I were the last two to perform. Both Sean Phoenix and Dave Burtwell, they had real jobs and real lives. And Vlad and I were just full-time performers. And so when you do that kind of a thing, you go where the money goes. There's a lot of times you end up having to, some people are like, you can make your market wherever you are, but that's a load of crap. You go where the money goes. And for Vlad and myself, the last year it was just the two of us. And what happened was we found out, I was in my late 20s, I think, at the time, and Vlad was slightly older. And that's all I'll say.
Hundreds of years.
Exactly, by a few hundred years, being a vampire. And it was a grind. It was doing 10 shows a day. These even if you're doing 15-minute slots, you go out, you hawk to the audience, you sell tickets, you come in, sit them down, do the show, go back out, reset. And by the time we were doing that last show, which I believe we called Archmage. Archmage was, I did an escape illusion in the show. It was the first big illusion I had built, which was, I called it the Sword of Damocles, which was a stock escape with a giant sword hanging on this big rig above my head. And if I didn't get out in 2 minutes, the audience came in, locked me in, they checked everything, made everything good, saw the blade was real. And if it didn't fall in, 2 minutes time, I think it was like maybe 90 seconds, Vlad would drop the sword. And what was great about that is that you couldn't do that routine with other performers, because you'd be like, there's no way he would hurt him. There's no way he would cause him pain. That's inhuman. But with Vlad, his character was perfect because his character is Vlad. So if you look at him and say, okay, in 90 seconds, you drop the sword and kill me, he said, well, you made a deal. So and it worked perfectly. And so everybody was like, he's in mortal danger. So by the time you're doing that 10 times a day for the entire month, you get tired. It just gets a strain on you. And so when Vlad decided to move down south, honestly, the choice was for me to kind of do it on my own. And I said, I'd rather go and do other things and get booked by other places. So from there, I went on to perform for Six Flags New England, for Fright Fest, for Sleepy Hollow, New York, which was amazing. Legends of Fear in Shelton, Connecticut. So I found that even though you go where the money is, I was still able to find money a little closer to home, for me, New York, Connecticut, and even Massachusetts for a little while there, because Six Flags is right over the line for me. But it was great. You just find where you can, and then Vlad, the vampire bat, went south for the winter and stayed for God now. I mean, how many years now? It's like seven or eight. So yeah,
and
I'm not moving.
Yep, that's right. So what are you doing now? What have you been up to the past, obviously the pandemic times, I guess is the best way to put it. What have you been doing the past year or so?
So it's been fun because so in 2015, I think 2015, I decided that I wanted to do illusions. And I've always wanted to do illusions. But the problem is, when you grow up in the world that I do, illusions are difficult because you want them to have a reason. And if you've ever seen Grand Illusions, if anybody here has watched Grand Illusion shows, reasons hard to come by. They really are. Having a reason for a substitution trunk or assistant's revenge is not easy to have a valid reason aside from I've got this box and we do this cool thing. So that was tough for me to think about and say like, okay, well, this makes sense to me or this doesn't make sense to me. And then we knew that we were doing an Irish theme, and I was going with Irish America as part of what I wanted to do. And it was about 2014 that it, and this is so random. This is how this started, really, is because in 2014 I started saying, well, I want to do an illusion show, but I want it to be Irish themed, and I want to have Celtic mythology and Irish history in it. And somebody actually I believe it was Rand Woodbury, was selling the top of an illusion called the subtrunk, and just the top. So I had to build the rest of it. I had to build everything underneath the actual trunk. But I said, well, what am I going to do with a trunk? And I started looking, and I started seeing these giant trunks that Irish immigrants would put everything into when they came over to America. And everything started rolling from there. And so that first routine built off of this actual stories of people with these trunks, and the trunks would crash, the waves would crash against these ships that they came over in, which were called coffin ships, because a lot of them died on the way over during the potato famine. And so the trunks would crash and would crush them. In some cases they would just try to sleep inside their own trunks, and they get locked inside, they suffocate and die. And all of this came together for this routine. And I was like, boom, there you go. So that's where that routine came from. And then other routines came from it too. We talked about, Irish have a curse for everything and about opening umbrellas. So we do a version of Andrew Maine's Voodoo Box with the umbrellas in the cardboard box. It was literally a show that we put together with 3 conditions. 1, everything has to be connected to this theme, even if it's lightly connected to Celtic mythology, Irish American history, Irish history, The second thing is that all of the effects had to be different, which is, if you've ever seen, like I said, you watch illusion shows, that's not easy because there's a lot of things that look like you get in and out of boxes, and you're just one person changes places with another. And there's only you talk about Fitzky's, the list of possible effects, I think it's even harder because illusions are so damn expensive. And then the third thing, so the first thing, I had to have a reason. Second thing is that we wanted all the effects to look different. And the third thing is that we had no money. Not a good place to start an illusion show with. But we had a deadline. We were performing for MistyCon in 2015 in May, and I was putting together this illusion show like a mad person. I needed 45 minutes for an illusion show. And that was it. So we only needed a couple of illusions, 3 or 4 pieces at most, and then we could have stuff that was good for me, like linking rings and ropes and things that I've done, escapes and things. And so we did it, and we put together the first version of the show, and then we expanded that to a 90-minute show. And we kept the rules. We still don't have as much. We still don't have money. We have more money than we had when we started doing it. But, we still follow those same rules and those same guidelines. You'll never see a prop on our stage for me that hasn't been touched by me. Like I'm a builder. I'm a rebuilder. I'm a rip down and create. And so, you're never going to see modern art in our show that looks like modern art. I'm sorry, it's just not going to be that way. I can't do it.
Well, those are good skills to have. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, having a background, because I had a background in theater practicum and carpentry, some woodworking, some metalworking, more woodworking, and a whole lot of set design from college, for college and local community theater and stuff. And from Renaissance fairs. You learn, if you want to work and run a Renaissance fair, you better learn some carpentry, or you're going to be paying somebody else a lot of money to do carpentry. So, and that's what I did. I actually spent the first number of years learning from a master carpenter, who was a whack job, but he was an amazing carpenter. It was so weird. Like he had, his one skill was that he could create anything out of wood, and it was gorgeous. It was art what he would make, but he himself off his rocker completely. So yeah, but he was my build manager for a couple of years, for a good few years. And I learned a lot by working with him at the Renaissance Fair that I co-own. So you take all that in and you bring it all into what you're doing, and you try to make something that looks beautiful, and at least something that looks like it fits. And I think that's more important than even something that looks beautiful or something um that looks shiny. It's just something that fits whatever it is you're doing. So that's where I go.
So, so what have you heard about the? Are you excited about the rest of 2021? Do you think for you it might be opening up a little bit more later on, and as more people get vaccinated and most areas obeying mask mandates and that sort of thing?
I'd like that to be the case. I really would, but it's really hard to. It's really hard to be optimistic when. So as I mentioned, I'm the co-owner of the Midsummer Fantasy Renaissance Faire in Ansonia, Connecticut. This would be our 10th season. Last year would have been our 10th season, but we had to close because of the apocalypse. Mm-hmm. So this year, our fair goes on the last weekend of June, first 2 weekends of July, and Connecticut's numbers are going up. They're not going down, because the number of vaccinations and people who are getting vaccinated aren't as high as we'd like, even though we're doing a better job than other states are in a lot of ways. We've run through 80% of our stock to kind of get, quasi-political for a moment. It's like you've run through that stock, and then they open the floodgates and allow anybody who wants to get a vaccine from April 1st on. I had to wait. I've scheduled my appointment, but my husband was on the phone for hours and hours and hours to get an appointment, and finally got one for the end of April for both of us, and we got lucky. Like, he was on the phone and he had hold, and like, there's so many people who don't have that resolve. I don't have that resolve. He did, So when that's the case, you look at those numbers and be like, there's no way we're going to have 70% of our population vaccinated by June. There's no way that, because there's also another number that you talk about, which is it's called the infection ratio, where if the ratio is above 1, basically somebody who's infected has the ability to infect another. By the way, my other partner show, Bella Greenwolf, she's an RN and works in the health department, has worked in 2 different health departments during the pandemic. So I know way too much about this already. But that whole thing about being like, the ratio, will you infect less than 1 person on average if you are infected, or do you infect more than 1 person? If the number is above 1, any percentage, that's not good. You want it to be less than 1. And right now we are above 1. There's a time where it was like 2 and this is the thing about this virus, is that it was like 2 or 3 people. Every person who was infected would infect 2 or 3 people. It's lower, but it's still scary. So I want to be optimistic about 2021. I do. There are events that say they're going to go on, and I want them to go on, and they're in my calendar, but we don't know, and so my fair is the same way. I want to be optimistic about that. And I've got a lot of friends who are getting vaccinated. I'm going to be vaccinated. I'm going to be able to see and hang out with people again who we know are safe, and they know that they're, we all know we're safe. But when you get to the big group dynamic, you get to thousands of people, you don't know, and it's scary, and it's scary to have that responsibility. These shows in Vegas, my heart goes out to Penn and Teller and Matt Franco and Piff and all these guys, and Matt King and these guys who, they have these companies that are making these decisions on one level for them, saying, okay, we can do 250 people and all this other stuff, but we're encouraging people to gather in groups and do a group activity. And where do you go from there? And it's a lot of responsibility when you run an event that brings in 6,000, 7,000 people, in a run. It's scary, and because you don't want to be that, you don't want to be the event on the news, that's, you don't want to be a biker week in Florida That so that's always scary. My apologies to anybody who runs biker weeks in Florida. I'm sure you have bigger guys to come beat me up, so I don't want to offend them.
Yeah. Good call. But yeah, and of course, anyone who's watching, get vaccinated, wear a mask. That, in other words, don't be stupid.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's that easy.
great. Yeah, don't do it. I think it's a political statement we can all get behind.
It shouldn't be political.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't be political. People have made it political. And let's be frank about that part. Don't be dumb. Listen to scientists and CDC, and the people are looking out for us because they want this all to be over too, as quickly as possible. So be smart. There's think like a biologist.
Although I'll tell you two things right now, and I mean this. Even after everybody's got a vaccine, even if we reach herd immunity, crossing fingers, and people are smart, they get vaccinated, we get boosters if that's what needs to be done. I'm fine with all of that. Two things I'm going to keep from this whole experience. One, actually three things. One, I want to keep doing virtual shows. I want to keep doing Zoom shows because there is a wealth gap that has been closed by I've got people who live in England who've seen my show, who they happen to come to America and see me at a Renaissance Fair, and that's how they saw my show previously. Now I've got people in Washington and Michigan and Florida and California and Texas who get to see my show by buying the same ticket as somebody who lives 40 minutes from where I'm doing a show. And I think a lot of people don't realize how really important that is for the arts, like to be able to be accessible. When Hamilton came to Disney Plus, it's monumental because, first of all, this is a thing that gets thousands of dollars, for a ticket, or when they're at their prime, and people couldn't see it. It was only meant for those who could afford it, or those lucky enough to get the tickets at that time, and to be able to close that wealth gap is amazing. And because artists should make money, don't get me wrong. Producers should make money, don't get me wrong. But to be able to close that wealth gap by saying distance is no longer a factor if you want to see this person, if you want to experience this show live in some way, it'll be different. It'd be different than if you and I were sitting across the table from each other, but they still get to experience it. So I'm going to keep doing virtual shows because I think that they're really great and they're fun. There's stuff that I can do that I can't do live. So close. I can do routines where I'm holding a deck of cards right there, and I would have to be literally like, I'd have to be I'd have to be unconsensually close to somebody, it would be bad. So I love that we can do that. So that's the first thing I want to take away. The second thing is, if I'm going to a grocery store, if I got to be on a subway or something, I'm wearing a mask. This is great. I haven't had a cold all year. Like, I'm keeping that. And the third thing is, if we're at a grocery store, stay 6 feet behind me. Do not get up on my grill while I'm standing in line to get out. Your frozen dinners are not important enough to have you breathing down my neck with your nasty, nasty face. So I'm keeping those three things. I'm just saying.
Yep,
thank you so much, Julie. Thank you.
Yep, I agree. It's we're all in this together. So please don't. It's like I was trying to explain to someone the other day. I said someone that was a little unprepared for the idea of vaccinations, I suppose, to put it mildly, and I told this person, you're putting other people in danger. Yep. When you don't get vaccinated, that's how you do it. It's like you might as well be walking around with helicopter blades on your head. Vaccinations are proven technology, so go out to do it. But we're not here to educate people on science because we're not scientists. We're magicians. So,
We're magicians, so let's get
but,
magicians. So let's get
we like to
political.
think, yeah. Well, it's I suppose for the second half of the show, we should go in a little a smidge in the political side because you are also an activist.
I
Uh,
am. And I think that it's funny because when I was growing up, something I heard a lot from other magicians was that your political views, if you want to work, then don't share your political views when you perform. I've done gigs, I perform for big companies where they say don't make jokes about this politician or don't make jokes about this thing, and I understand, and I do, I can tone me up or down to get a paycheck. That's not a problem.
mm,
However, I have discovered that I am way too gay to let people who don't like the idea of other people existing just because of who they decide to love. I've found out that that's not the I can't do it. I can't do it. You're never going to see me doing a show for Hobby Lobby, if you know what I'm saying.
yeah.
So um yeah, so so I ended up becoming an advocate for queer rights and for ethical non-monogamy. I'm polyamorous. I have a husband and I have a wife. We raised two daughters that I've been in their lives for 7 years now. Our daughters are 10 and 11, so they've known me since they were 3 and 4. And it's so funny because there is a legal bias against odd numbers. And this sounds very strange, but think of it this way, okay? If I say polyamory, people think of, well, more than two people getting married at the same time is what polyamory, more than two relationships going on at the same time. So you've got 3 people in a relationship, 4 people, 5 people. But here's the thing. If 4 people want to get married at the same time, they can. It's just 2 couples getting married at the same time. They do this going back to biker weeks, right? They have these giant things where 50 couples will get married by the same priest and the same day at the same time. And then they all get the same rights and the same privileges as each other. They all get, marriage rights and all these other things. But if there's an extra person, if there's an odd number, they don't get those rights. They don't get to be recognized as a legal marriage. They don't get visitation rights in hospitals. They don't get parental rights for kids. There's all these things they don't get. Health insurance, like tax, right? All of these weird government things just because it's an odd number. So I am, if anything, I'm an advocate. I am pro odd number. That's what I am. I'm pro odd number. Prime numbers, odd numbers. I'm
Well,
pro those.
I always knew you're pro odd.
I'm pro odd. Oh,
That's
without a doubt.
yeah.
I was semi pro and then I went full pro many years ago. But yeah, I mean it's baffling to me. And so as somebody, and I found out that being an advocate for that, being open and honest about who I am, and I'm pansexual, and which means I don't regard gender in terms of who I decide to love. To me, gender is a very fluid thing anyway. And also the Celts had very similar views. I actually mentioned that in my show about how the fact that the ancient Celts, from what we can tell, they didn't have the gender roles that we have. It wasn't the men went out and hunted, gathered. No, women stayed home and took care of the children. It was everybody hunted, everybody fought shoulder to shoulder. Everybody raised the children. It was a very tribal mentality. And the hierarchy, although there's plenty of gender politics throughout all of history, the hierarchy for the Celtic tribes were very much so not gendered in that sense. And more so, if you look at some of the Celtic mythologies of gods and gods and goddesses and deities, there are deities that represent as male, represent as female, and those who represent without gender or represents both genders. And that is so fascinating to me that thousands of years ago, these were beliefs that were held, and somehow with certain Abrahamic religions, that got let go. Well, more so Christianity, not more so just focusing on the Christianity. Let's be honest. Other Abrahamic religions, they're a little cooler about it, but they were pretty vicious about that kind of thing. So for me to be able to say that in my show and to state who I am, it gets me work that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. I was not being an advocate for polyamory. I had a video that was seen over 35 million times on Facebook and a couple million times on YouTube. And we were interviewed by BuzzFeed Live, which was seen over a million times or whatever. And I got to do magic, and I got to do magic in these videos. So people got to know me as a magician who also was polyamorous, who also was pansexual. And I want those things to be. I also want them to know I'm a ginger. This is real. I swear. Those are all aspects about who I am. And I think that it's important to
everything else is fine. The ginger part's the weird part.
That's it. That's the line, right? You're like, we're done. I'm done with this interview. By the way, I just love the fact that my cat decided to join us for the interview, and I appreciate my cat jumping in. But yeah, I've become an advocate, and I like to make it known, because if someone doesn't want to work with me because I'm gay, or doesn't want to work with me because I'm weird and I have a weird lifestyle, then I don't want to work with them either. And, I kind of quote Max Maven when it comes to that. When Max Maven talks about the way he looks, right? Because Max Maven, you've ever seen him when he performs, he's got a very specific kind of look. And he always used to say, I know I've gotten work because of the way I look and the way I dress. I also know that I've lost work, but I'll never know the work I've lost because they don't bother calling me, and that's the same thing for me. I won't know what work I've actually lost because of the way I look, with very rare exceptions. But I know the work I have gotten. I got on AAMC's Dispatches from Elsewhere because I'm a magician who wears a kilt with long red hair, and I'm boisterous, and I'm big, and I'm out there. And the director saw me amongst all of these other magicians. There were some big names who apparently had written to be a part of this thing. It's just like a little spot in the episode. But a lot of people said, hey, it's a paying gig. It's in Philadelphia. It's a day of shooting. You get to be on a big show on AMC, work with Jason Segel and Sally Field and these people. And it was cool. And they chose me. And the director said, like, your energy, your style, what you came across to me in the few minutes on screen blew me away. And I have to take that. I have to say I did something right there. And it's not going to work for everything. No one's going to confuse me for David Copperfield. And I'm fine with that, because I'm not David. I'm not David Blaine. I'm not Chris Angel. I'm not even Jeff McBride. I am a weird ginger in a kilt who talks about Irish stuff.
And we wouldn't have it any other way. I've seen you perform before, and the one thing I can never say is that you don't have energy. The energy carries from the very beginning to the very end. And it seems to be very natural. What other people do with cocaine, you do without it. At least
you can't, it's very difficult to say. And it's funny if I do something where I'm low key, I know Meadow Perry's like, you're not David Copperfield. What? I'm so sorry. I may have led you astray. I do not have an island of my own. I'm so sorry. That might be the downside. I don't have an island. Or the most amazing.
Owning islands have become very un-PC the past couple of years. You may have heard about.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess it's true. I guess so. I mean, like Dr. Doom, he had an island. He had a whole one. Anyways, but I really, it's I guess for me, it's like especially when I was fat, because I say I was fat. I was, and I'm not saying I was overweight. I'm not saying, no, I was 355 pounds. I had a 56-inch waist. And I'm only 5'10". That's not good. It was bad. And I was, I was very unhealthy, but I had this energy. And I've always had this energy, and maybe it was a compensation tactic, to overcompensate, be like, don't look at my body, look at how silly I am and look how crazy I am. And when I lost the weight, you'd figure I would mellow out maybe, or I get older, I mellow out. That's not the case. I've seen become more rabid and more more insane as time has gone on, which I'm fine with. I'm okay with it because it makes me a better fighter for the things I believe in, and I like that.
Yeah, you're a fantastic performer with like tons of energy. You know, you mix magic and storytelling and illusions. You know, so and that's something that comes up with newer magicians. You know, the illusion show or the concept of the illusions has kind of been not, I guess, a little on hold the past few years to some degree. You know, it's I don't think it's a dying art necessarily, but not a lot of people are focusing on you know, close-up stage performances, basically. You know, with the advent of video projections
Oh
and
yeah,
things
yeah.
along those lines.
The was the what they call them, mag cams, I think. I might be off on that. Um so yeah, I love that. I decided to get into illusions, and then a couple of years they have a global pandemic where you can't perform on a stage. Um let me tell you, I see the future, man. Let me tell you. But what I think is interesting is that so there's all these people, and I mentioned Matt Franco as a great example. Somebody who does primarily, he's made close-up magic work for a big stage, and it's beautiful. It's a good show. It's all about his character and his personality, and solid magic, you know. Um and maybe the people that are not doing well as illusionists are people that think that the illusions are more important than their character, and are more important than the story they're telling. And that's what I see with some of these folks where, well, I gave up doing illusions. It was too much money and effort. No one wanted to see it. And yes, it is a lot of money, and it's a lot of effort, and you've got to want it. You got to want it bad to want to be an illusionist, because I am going to have hours of setup for a show that somebody who's a mentalist can walk in with a briefcase and they can do an hour. You know, I'm going to take I'm going to take 3 hours to set up my show so I can do 60 minutes, or I can, set up for 5 hours so I can do 90 minutes, and then I have to break it down, load it back onto a truck, drive it somewhere, or fly it somewhere or something like that. And you got
Yes.
to want that, because if you aren't, and if you're theatrically minded, if you're somebody who loves theater, and I'm obsessed. I'm obsessed with theatrics and this stuff. And you can get a lot out of lighting. You can get a lot out of beautiful sound design. But to have a beautiful set, to have a beautiful piece that you can interact with, to have people on stage you can interact with. Sure, I can talk to somebody off from the audience, and I bring people up from the audience all the time. And I love that. And our show's very interactive for an illusion show too. But to have a piece on stage that they can look at, and to have some set design, some backdrop, or something like that that creates this essence and this mood, that's what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I've got these 12-foot tall, 4-foot wide banners that I have for either side of my stage. And we've got these, backdrops and lighting and stuff. And the reason why I use those is because I'm trying to create this thing. Not every show has to be our town. And that's my problem for everybody. For those who don't know, Our Town is a minimalist show almost always. And,
Mm-hmm.
they'll use ladders to represent, talking in a balcony and stuff like it's, um, and they don't, these people, they want everything to be, they're like, well, we're minimalist. I've got nothing on a stage. Look at someone like Darren Brown, who creates a giant show and beautiful pieces and all of these things. Derek Delgadio, in and of itself, this set, which is part of the show in itself, even though it's not a big show
Mm-hmm.
in terms of illusions and stuff, the set is gorgeous and beautiful. And you can't do that's people like Frank Oz doing work, you know? And I'm going to look at those folks. I'm going to look at the Hamiltons and the Wickeds and the Dear Evan Hansons and these folks, and say that and Avenue Q, You know, it's a show with puppets. You know, it's like you look at these shows and they put it on the stage. Cirque du Soleil is a spectacle. And you can say what you want, but they are a spectacle that people pay money to see, because even if the story is kind of half-assed, because sometimes, look, I love Cirque du Soleil, but sometimes their stories are the most basic stories in the world. And you don't know what they're saying because they speak Circish, like purposefully.
Yeah.
But these folks are creating an entire essence, especially when you walk in, you know. I'm not a fan of Chris Angel. I'm a fan of Chris Angel's team. His team is amazing. I've seen his show in Vegas, and his team, his lighting team, his set design team, his illusion team is amazing. I'm not a fan of his personality. Chris's personality, it's too brash. It's too, I'm done talking about myself. Now let's talk about me for a moment. But his everything around him is brilliant. I know some of the folks who work on his show, and they are amazing. And the stuff that comes across that doesn't have to do with his personality for me personally, and I know that everybody's different, but I can respect that. So for me, that's what you get from illusion shows. And even someone like Penn and Teller, who they do a lot of close-up bits. They do a lot of these other bits. Look at their staging. Their staging is beautiful. Their setting is beautiful. They do all these things, and they do it really well. But they hide, and they do illusions, right? They do grand illusions. So I don't think illusions are dead. I think that the 90s are dead, and they need to stay dead.
Yeah.
Because, Matt's a great point. It looks like a steel ride at the yearly carnival. Like, if so many illusions, and I love these builders, all of it. I love the Paul Osbornes, the Jim Steinmeyers, and all of these people, and the Mendozas, and all these folks who make these amazing illusions. I want to say in my heart that they're not looking to have you have everybody who makes that, like they make the illusion. I don't think they want them all to look the same. But that's what magicians do, right? The magicians do, because they want to resell it eventually, because they're not going to keep it in their show forever. So they're not going to change the paint job on it. They're not going to fabricate it, And I can't stand that. That's why I give my love to people like Dan Sperry. You look at his stuff when he has his illusions. Dan Sperry has put his heart into those illusions, and they look gorgeous. They look amazing. There's so many people like that. Even Matt King does an illusion in his show, and it's awesome, and it's great, and it's stupid, but it's great. It's a great illusion. But so illusions I don't think are dead. I think that's what I think. I think the 90s are dead, and they need to stay that way. I
agree with that. I think the illusions are only, like you're seeing less of them only because there's a current fad of, or if you want to call it that, or a current focus. That's a better word for, the close up on stage type style show. For a lot of places, that's cheaper than shipping big boxes of illusions and things along those lines. I'll tell you one thing I'm not a fan of is shows that claim to respond with a silent awe. I don't like that term.
Silent awe?
You haven't heard it before? Silent awe?
So when someone says silent awe, all I can think of is, and they looked upon it with awe. Aw. Yeah. Not awe. 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 Yep. Oh, that's what goes in my brain.
I think what they believe is happening is that they're so amazed. The audience is so amazed by the mentalist show they just did, Propolis Mentalism, is that they're in silent awe. Like, I don't know what I just saw. I don't think what really is happening is probably, I can't believe I bought tickets to this, is actually what's happening.
I totally agree. I totally agree.
A lot of mentalists who are focusing so hard on the Propolis concept of like doing a show with not even billets, like nothing, just like you know, and that, with like an entire half hour of branching anagrams and things like that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And you know what? It's funny is I was, in fact, just the other night, I had the pleasure of watching. And so I've gotten to watch a lot of shows and performers because of the pandemic that I wouldn't normally get to see. And so, you know, I've gotten to see Christian Cagigal and David Parr. Well, I've seen David a bunch, but because I love David, but you know, but David Parr and Joe Diamond and you know, and Carissa Hendricks, and these are all people who've been doing these amazing Zoom shows and these amazing online shows, and they're not propless and everything, and they're doing this thing where everything in their show, you know, everything in their set feels like it's connected. You know, they take their time to make their background fit what they're doing. Actually, this is funny. This is not the background for my show or anything like that. This is just how my this is just how my bookshelves look. And I put a little curtain here to block the door so that way there's not so much sound bouncing around. But this is just my bookshelves. But like, you know, I have a backdrop and everything that I pull across when I do this. But these folks, and Joe Diamond just specifically, you know, because he's very much so, you know, it coins himself as a mind reader, you know, and it was a great show. And it was, if you looked at the material that he did, you know, it's maybe the closest thing I've seen to just a straight up mentalism show that just does mentalism, but he's using cards, he's using props, he's using pendulums, and he's using these things and interacting with the audience, having them use their cell phone. They have them use their cell phone at one point, not using the calculator either. Just saying, mentalists. But like, and involving the audience several steps of the way, you know, and not a goddamn Rubik's Cube in sight. And I'm so happy about that. That's my own thing. I don't need to see Rubik's Cube magic anymore. And I don't need to see a card turn into a watch anymore. I'm done. We're good. Also, if you punch 4 holes in a playing card, I'm good. I don't need to see it anymore. All right. It's all over TikTok. It's all over Instagram. Bring me something different, please. That's all I ask. Just crossing fingers. Anyways, sorry. All respect to the 2 guys who do Rubik's Cube magic out there. That is amazing. And that's what they do, you know. In fact, there's the guy who does Rubik's Cube magic, and like his whole show is that. And he's great. I can't remember his name off the top of my head because I'm that's where my brain is. But like, there's that one guy, and that's it, you know. But that's my thing. Is like these other folks are doing this stuff. You know, Christian Cagigal, beautiful show, so much fun. It's relaxed, it's chill. You feel like you're talking to him, and it works really well, and it just feels great. To watch. David Parr, another one, just feels great to watch and connect with. So, I love that. I love seeing that, you know. And then you got people who have, but I'm telling you right now, you know, it's like, and other people who've got big sets. Meadow Perry, who is in the chat, she does an amazing show. She's a bubble magician. She might as well be an illusionist with all the junk she has to carry around for a show.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But it creates a beautiful show and a beautiful experience for people that they're not going to see elsewhere. Even through Zoom, they're not going to see. I saw another bubble show, and it was just not. There was no one. I didn't care. I didn't care about what I was watching because there was no story there. There was no energy. That I felt like I was watching a pre-recorded thing, you know. And I think that's what makes a big difference with these shows. It makes a big difference with mentalism or with bizarre or with illusions. Is I like the idea of you know, Eugene Berger talks about texture, right? I like the idea of being able to feel and go on that roller coaster ride of happy moments and sad moments and silent pieces and talking pieces and mentalism and magic and all these things together. And Joseph Daniels, if you're doing a piece of Rubik's Cube magic with a plot, I want to see it. There's another man who's an amazing performer, and I trust him. I could say that I trust him to do a piece of magic that I will not hate with Rubik's cubes.
Oh,
Um, so, but yeah, I really do think that like that's the difference between, and that's what makes Zoom shows work. That's why it's not a YouTube video. That's why it's because there's sincerity. You know, Eugene Berger always talked about it's not about being serious or being funny. It's about being sincere, and that just does it for me.
I agree. You know, it's like, you know, my big, you know, I don't know about a lot of other people. I like applause at the end of my show. You know,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And also, people want to clap. People want to respond. And if you don't give them that chance, and this, I don't know, this is this thing for magicians. If you never give the audience a chance to respond, you might think like, oh, it's canned. If you stand there waiting for applause, you give them an applause cue, like just by the way that you do with your scripting or your writing, it's cheesy. It doesn't work. Audiences need that release. If you don't give them that release, you know, you're doing them a disservice. You know, I watched Play Dead with Todd Robbins on Broadway, well, off Broadway, but you know, I'll say it's on Broadway. Um, and 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 his show, there's plenty of places where you can clap, plenty of places you can respond, but you might feel weird about it. Like, I don't know if Todd wants that release from people, but he definitely gives it in the way that he performs, and he gives them those times where they can clap and cheer or laugh or or you know, exalt in some way. And audiences need that because that's what they've been raised on.
Mm-hmm.
You know, before us, before magicians, you know, before they saw our show, they've been to theater, you know, theatrical shows or something. Even movie theaters. How many times have you been in a movie theater after a movie, a big premiere, and at the end of the movie, people clap? I've been there. I was there for Star Wars,
Yep.
Phantom Menace, when they came out with the Phantom Menace, and we remember how that turned out. But at the end of that movie, everybody clapped and cheered because
I remember
they
that.
hadn't seen it.
First movie I ever saw where someone clapped and cheered, believe it or not, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
I loved that movie, and I don't care that Kevin Costner can't speak with an English accent if his life depended on it. I still love that movie, so I am with you, and I'm with them for clapping.
It was the scene at the end of the movie where Sean Connery comes out, and that is where they actually stood up and clapped.
I love it. I love it. I was there, and more recently, I was there for Avengers Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
And when the scene where all of the women superheroes, they did the big lineup of all the women superheroes, the cheering that came in when they all stood there it echoed in this theater. You know, it's the last time I could see. I think it was the last real movie I saw in theaters. Now I can think of it, you know, before the apocalypse hit. But like that was so powerful. You know, we were having an experience together, that audience. And that's why I know that live stuff is going to come back. But that's why I know that Zoom stuff can matter too, because those people can still have that experience, even if you are doing it silently or you're laughing. And even if I can't hear it, you know, the magician, the performer, they need to hear it. But I think the audience can see it. And when the audience sees other people doing, whether it's ASL clapping or they're making notes in the chat or saying something, then they feel like they can experience it in that way too. And that's how we can have those shared experiences, even if we're doing Zoom or if we're in a group together. So yeah, let them clap, let them applaud. Don't be a douche canoe. Like, that's it. That's, so yeah, that's just my general thought. So I agree with you. It's my long way of saying I agree with you, Vince. I'm sorry.
Well, I appreciate it. I always like to be agreed with. So, so anyway, that's about perfectly wrapping up 1 hour of talking for this week. I mean, that did really well. Is there any plugs you have or things coming up that you want to talk about?
So if folks go to celticmagicshow.com/virtually live, which right now we don't have a show. We're going to be putting our show for the end of April very shortly. We're going to be appearing and doing our shows, and we do them, we do them once a month. Actually, we do 2 shows a month. We try to do a Friday and a Saturday night show, usually 7:30 Eastern time. And it's a show that we've been doing and we're really enjoying the heck out of. And last month I did a lecture for magicians called Dreo, which is the Irish word for magic. And it went over really well, and I really enjoyed doing it. So I might be doing that again for magical folk who want to see it. And I teach a lot of stuff that I've been lucky enough to develop some magic over the course of 20 years. I say that I know I'm a young punk, but I did start creating magic when I was 15. And things like the Wicker Man, things that I've built and created, I really, I sold that to Murphy's Magic when I was 20, I believe. Doing that effect, and I had pieces that appeared in Mum and things like that, even from early on. So I've been trying to create stuff of my own for years and years, and I realized when I look back, I'm like, oh, I've got some stuff I can share. So yeah. So at some point in April, maybe May, who knows? But we'll probably be doing another lecture for magical magician folk, and I hope folks can come see it. And they can follow me at Daniel Greenwolf on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, on Blitzen. I know, but whatever. But yeah. So, and hopefully at some point I will be performing Celtic Magic virtually live with the fine folks at Pose Magic, and I would love to do that.
Yep, definitely. Very soon, as a matter of fact, and live and in person. That's right. Because remember, you were supposed to perform live and in person last year. Yeah,
I know. You were going to have me in March of 2020, but y'all took the easy way out and decided to have a global pandemic instead. Well, I'm coming to collect, my friend.
Well, that's it. Some people still blame me because I did the Apocalypse Tarot at the seance at East Coast Spirit Sessions.
You had one job. Don't cause a global pandemic. You had one job.
Well, the problem was that only Pestilence actually listened. The rest of the 3 horsemen and
I don't know. I don't know. I watched some of the horsemen run rampant around the White House for a couple of years. So I'm good with just boring politics and painful politics as usual.
Yep. Hopefully it's just boring politics from this point on. Just regular boring politics,
Yeah, we'll see what happens once we get to the other side of the global catastrophe and see where we come out. But I hope so. And I hope to see you on the other side with a vaccinated hand to shake and a hug, good sir.
Likewise. All right, everyone. Have a great evening, and please tune in for more Pose Magic Academy interviews coming up with wonderful, great talent like Daniel Greenwolf, who is here tonight. And Daniel, thank you so much. And click on the links. I will post direct links to Daniel's website in the chat, and in a few moments, so you can click on it, because just in case you're lazy and you can't type in DanielGreenwolf.com, I will have
You can Google me. Just Google Daniel Greenwolf. I'm all over the Webber tubes.
I don't know, might be too much effort. I mean, they're already logged in here. Might as well give them a chance. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yep. So we go. Thank you for coming in. Yep.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. I love you, Joseph.
Yeah, we love you, Joseph.
Love you, Meadow, Aaron, Stephanie. Oh, thank you so much, Stephanie, Julie. All my love to all of you. Good to see you. Thank you, Meadow. Put it in the chat. See, thank you, Meadow. Appreciate you.
There you go. DanielGreenwolf.com. All right, everyone. You have a great night. Signing off. See you next week. Arrivederci.
Slanch.